In this segment, I would like to describe a new type of rule that we've just recently added to TBTA. And the purpose of this new type of rule is to make grammar development much simpler. Before I show you this new type of rule, I'd like to show you what the English grammar was like with our old approach to developing grammars. If we look in the Spellout rules for verbs, you can see there were multiple rules for tense and agreement. There was a rule for mood, a couple of rules for polarity. If we look up here, there were various rules to insert the polarity auxiliary, the salience auxiliary, the passive auxiliary, the interrogative auxiliary, the mood auxiliary, and so on. If we look down here at the phrase structure rule for verb phrases, there were several of them. The first one has many constituents, and getting the constituents in the right order with the tense and agreement on the right verb, it was complex. It was doable, but it was complex. And after watching several people develop grammars for various languages in TBTA, we came up with this new approach that significantly simplifies your grammar development. And I'd like to show you this new type of rule in this particular segment. Let's switch over. I have another English database. I call it English with Phrase Builder. Phrase Builder is the new type of rule that I'll be demonstrating in this video. Now, when we look at our Spellout rules for verbs, there's only one rule here. The rule has 9 layers. These Phrase Builder rules can have up to 100 layers. And you add rows. Each row will handle one particular construction. And we'll come back and look at this in more detail in a moment. But the point is, there's one rule here, and it builds all of your verb phrases. When we look down in the phrase structure rules for verb phrases, there's only one rule. And it's much simpler than that other verb phrase rule that I showed you. Up in the structural adjustment rules, there isn't a set of rules to add the various auxiliaries, the aspectual auxiliaries, the salience auxiliaries, the polarity auxiliaries, the mood auxiliaries, and so on. So this new type of rule significantly simplifies your grammar development. And you can use this new type of rule for all of your phrase types. Here's one rule that will build all of your noun phrases. Here's another rule that will build all of the adjective phrases. And one more rule that will build all of the adverb phrases. Now the verb phrases are the most complex, so I'd like to look at those in this segment. And as I mentioned earlier, each row will handle one particular situation. So in this layer, we have unmarked aspect, indicative, and declarative. So this row handles past affirmative. For example, a man walked. This handles past negative. For example, John didn't walk. Past emphatic affirmative, John certainly walked. Past emphatic negative, John certainly didn't walk, etc. And I'd like to show you how to build these new types of rules. Let's turn this rule off, okay? And then we'll start. And we'll start with a brand new phrase builder rule. So I double click there, and when we select phrase builder, here's a new blank phrase builder Spellout rule. Let's add a layer. We'll call this aspect. We're here in verbs 1-6, and when we look at the features under walk, we see that the time is past and aspect is inceptive. So this generates John started walking. It's past tense inceptive aspect. Let's give this rule a name. Build all VPs. Let's double click here. Let's call this past inceptive. And we'll assign features to this structure. Past inceptive. And let's give it a comment. Verbs 1-6. John started walking. And let's make this a bit wider. And we'll need to add a column. Now you can give these columns any name that you want. You can make them very precise. You could call it aspectual auxiliary or polarity auxiliary. But my suggestion is to make these column names very generic. Let's call this pre-verbal. This will contain, this one column will contain all the constituents that go before the verb. If you have some constituents that follow the semantically main verb, you could call it post-verbal. So you can call these columns any name that you want, but again, I highly recommend just keeping it very generic and simple. Okay, now here, John started walking. Okay, for the verb, walking, we want the participle form, so I'm going to select participle. For the preverbal, we'll enter started. And this will build John started walking. Let's go ahead and save this. And now when we generate it, okay, John started walking. And you can see that this preverbal constituent was inserted by this new rule that we just built, layer 1, called aspect, row 1, called past inceptive, column 3, preverbal. And it selected the participle form for us. If we go to the next verse, okay, this verse generates, the time has passed and the aspect is cessative, so this generates John stopped walking, past tense cessative aspect. So let's add another layer, or add another row, excuse me. Let's call it past cessative, and we specify our features, past tense cessative aspect. Let's enter comment, verbs 1-7. John stopped walking. And you need to add some spaces at the end. Okay, John stopped walking. And again, for the verb in English, we want the participle form, we want walking. And here, we want stopped. And now when we generate it, John stopped walking. And this was added by layer 1, which we called aspect, row 2, past cessative, etc. So you can build rules. These phrase builder rules will put everything into the verb phrase or the noun phrase or the adjective phrase, anything that you need in there. Let's go back to the one that's more complete. As I mentioned before, this looks at various tenses. This looks at various aspects, all aspects, indicative, declarative. This handles all of the moods. This handles all of the verb phrases for passive constructions. Adverbial clauses. This layer handles all of the imperatives. This handles all of the content questions. This handles all of the yes-no questions. And then, in English, our verb to be is very irregular, so we need a special layer specifically for it, and it will deal with the personal number of the subject. So first and third singular past, first and third singular past negative, second singular past. So you have a row for every particular situation that is relevant in your language. And again, I highly recommend this. This makes your grammar development much simpler. And that concludes this segment.